Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button not to miss any stories. My name is Daniel Jacks, and this is How a Ghost Put a Man in Jail. In the late 1800s, Greenbriar County, West Virginia, was a picturesque region characterized by its rolling hills and dense forests. Amidst this serene backdrop lived Zona Heaster, a young woman known for her beauty and kind spirit. Zona, born in 1871, was raised in a loving family, and as she grew into adulthood, she caught the attention of many suitors. However, it was Edward Shue, a local blacksmith, who ultimately won her heart. Their courtship was a whirlwind romance, and despite some concerns from Zona's family about Edward's character, she married him in the winter of 1896. The couple settled into their life together in a modest home on the outskirts of town. To outsiders, they appeared to be a typical couple, but behind closed doors, their relationship was fraught with tension. As the months passed, Zona's family began to notice changes in her demeanor. She seemed withdrawn, and whispers of domestic strife began to circulate. Edward's temper was notorious, and it became apparent that he was not the loving husband Zona had hoped for. Friends and family grew increasingly concerned about her well-being, but Zona remained committed to her marriage, believing that things would improve. On January 23, 1897, tragedy struck. Zona was found dead in her home under suspicious circumstances. The news of her untimely death spread quickly through the community, and the circumstances surrounding it raised many eyebrows. The local doctor, Dr. George W. Knapp, was summoned to examine the body. His conclusion was that Zona had died from what he described as childbed fever, a common term for complications arising from childbirth. However, the details of her death were anything but clear. As Zona's body lay in the family home, the community rallied around her grieving family. But as friends and relatives gathered for the funeral, questions began to arise about the true nature of her death. Zona's mother, Mary Heaster, was particularly troubled by the idea that her daughter had died from natural causes. She had her suspicions about Edward and believed he may have played a role in Zona's death. During the funeral, Edward was seen acting strangely, displaying an unusual lack of grief. His behavior only fueled the speculation surrounding his involvement. After the burial, Mary Heaster became convinced that her daughter's spirit was trying to communicate with her. Over the following weeks, Mary began to experience vivid dreams in which Zona appeared, revealing the truth about her death. In her dreams, Zona's ghost recounted the events leading up to her death. She claimed that Edward had attacked her during an argument, ultimately causing her demise. In one particular vision, Zona described how Edward had choked her and struck her in the head, leading to her fatal injuries. Mary was both horrified and determined to seek justice for her daughter. The supernatural claims became a focal point in her quest for truth. On February 22, 1897, Zona's body was exhumed. Dr. Knapp was present, along with several other local men, including the county coroner, who conducted a thorough examination. What they discovered was shocking. Zona's neck had been broken, and there were signs of trauma to her head. This evidence contradicted the initial diagnosis of natural causes. The findings prompted the authorities to arrest Edward Shue, who was subsequently charged with murder. The townspeople were taken aback. The whispers of Zona's ghostly visitations began to circulate, fueling the town's fascination with the case. On February 22, 1897, just weeks after Zona's burial, authorities exhumed her body. What they found would change the course of the investigation. Zona's remains were examined by Dr. Knapp, who had initially declared the cause of death. Upon further inspection, it became evident that Zona had suffered severe trauma to her neck, indicating that she had indeed been strangled. The trial of Edward Shue began on June 26, 1897. The courtroom was packed, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. The prosecution presented the evidence from the exhumation, highlighting the physical signs of abuse and the motive stemming from a troubled marriage. They called Mary Heaster to the stand, where she recounted her chilling dreams and Zona's revelations. Edward's defense team attempted to discredit Mary's claims, arguing that the ghostly visions were nothing more than a grieving mother's imagination. They painted Edward as a victim of circumstantial evidence, claiming that he had loved Zona deeply and would never harm her. However, the prosecution's case was bolstered by the testimonies of neighbors who had witnessed Edward's violent tendencies. As the trial progressed, the townsfolk were captivated by the unusual nature of the case, with the idea of a ghost providing evidence of murder becoming a sensational topic. After several days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The overwhelming evidence against Edward Shue, combined with Mary Heaster's emotional testimony, led to a guilty verdict. Edward was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. The community erupted in a mix of relief and disbelief as the story of Zona's ghost had captivated their imaginations. Edward's conviction marked a significant moment in the history of Greenbriar County. The case became a local legend, and Zona's ghost was forever linked to the story of her tragic death. The haunting of the Greenbriar Ghost became a symbol of unresolved love and the quest for justice.